What's going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. Let's get right into it. Germaine Pratt, linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals, really has been a face of their defense over the past couple of years. He officially has requested a trade. NFL Network reporting this, so we're going to be talking about that here on today's show, my reaction to it, and what I think it could mean for the linebacker position of the Cincinnati Bengals going forward into 2025. Also, coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking Jermaine Burton. And I got the word saga right there on the graphic. That's exactly what this has been. Everything about Jermaine Burton has been just a saga to this point. He got evicted yet again, and we're going to be detailing that as well as kind of our response to that as well. And Joe Burrow was back on the Pardon My Take podcast. What a hilarious podcast there. Barstool guys, PFT and Big Cat. Joe Burrow sat down with them at the Super Bowl at Radio Row, and that interview aired this morning, so we're going to be talking about that. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up icon if you have not done so already. We are in a like battle with our Ravens channel, and we're in a pretty good spot right now as it sits here about 2 weeks into February. So we want to continue to distance ourselves. Joey Peterson over at the Ravens Rundown doing a tremendous job. But we're in a like battle with them this month, and we are trying to take care of business. So hit that thumbs up icon for me right now. All right, this is who did the reporting about this Germaine Pratt trade request. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network tweeting this out earlier today, a little bit before 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Bengals defensive captain and leading tackler Germaine Pratt has requested a trade. Sources tell him and Tom Pelissero Cincinnati has been devoting resources to keeping their offensive core together, and Pratt was close to defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, who was fired after last season. My instant takeaway from this is, look, Germaine Pratt was probably going to get cut anyway. We've talked about, potential Cincinnati Bengals cut candidates. Bengals save a decent amount of money if they move off him. And I think that's what they were planning on doing. Now, if they brought in a totally new defensive coordinator that hadn't been here before in Cincinnati, I would say 100% he was getting cut. But with the, Al Golden coming in, of course, Golden coached Germaine Pratt for a couple of years there as a linebackers coach here in Cincinnati, and Pratt, of course, played the best football of his career under Al Golden. So I thought, maybe there would be a chance that Golden would want to keep him. Does not look like that was the case. I would imagine Germaine Pratt went to ownership and was like, hey, or went to the front office and said, hey, I'm looking for an extension. And they probably said, yeah, that's not going to happen. They have enough on their plate at this point, and they're busy, worried about paying guys that have produced out there on the football field. And as Rappaport mentioned, yeah, Pratt was the leading tackler for the Cincinnati Bengals, but at the same time, Pratt had a ton of missed tackles out there on the football field. And at that linebacker position, tackles are just going to naturally come. When you watch him these past couple of years, he appears to have lost a step a little bit. He doesn't move around as well as he did. And the missed tackles were a problem throughout the entirety of the Cincinnati Bengals defense. Absolutely no doubt about that. But, I was kind of surprised that he ultimately was probably trying to go to the front office and ask for an extension. Again, that's just kind of what my gut tells me, that he was looking for an extension. They said no, and then he requested the trade. But regardless, Lou Anarumo leaving certainly did not help his case. And it looks like the Bengals are going to be without Germaine Pratt next year, which, by the way, I think is a really, really good thing. I think it was time. Germaine Pratt is a Cincinnati Bengals legend for what he has done with this organization. That interception he had when they beat Las Vegas in the playoffs, picking off Derek Carr, stealing the game, that will go down in Bengals history. Absolutely no doubt about that. So, I don't want to just sit here and disrespect Germaine Pratt, but I do think the best thing for this football team at the linebacker position is let kind of Logan Wilson be the leader in that room and try to build around it this offseason via the draft and free agency. Leads us to the pinned comment of today's video. What is your one-word reaction to Germaine Pratt requesting a trade? Mine's probably fine, right? Again, I think he was going to get cut anyway, so this doesn't really do a ton for me. But let me know. Give me your one-word reaction in the comment section. If that ad comes here on YouTube, totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down there. Let me know what you think. All right, let's talk about a different Germaine here. Jermaine Burton has been evicted for the second time in less than 2 months. Kind of just a head-scratching situation when it comes to Jermaine Burton, right? You get picked in the third round to go play professional football, and he hasn't executed whatsoever, and he's just done some really dumb stuff throughout this past year here in Cincinnati. Let's get into what Danielle Goodman wrote covering the Bengals for WCPO Channel 9. This is what she wrote in regards to Jermaine Burton. Burton was to leave the property on February 4th after receiving a warning on January 31st. The eviction was due to lease violations, but the specific violations are unknown. This is not the first time Burton has been evicted. Court records show that on December 23rd, he received an eviction notice from his apartment for unpaid rent. So that was last night. And then James Rapine doing some more reporting, so some more details have come out. This is what Rapine wrote, so we have a little bit more clarity as to why Jermaine Burton got evicted this time around. Sources tell BengalsTalk.com that Burton had a family member staying at his house when he was out of town. The family member brought their dogs with them, which didn't comply with the rental agreement. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Should the Bengals cut Jermaine Burton? Let me know in the comments section. Type C for cut or K for keep. You can sound off for us right now. Now, look, if he didn't have the previous eviction, right, and he didn't have the sexual assault allegations, which we will get into, or excuse me, not sexual assault, just assault allegations that we will get into, I don't think this would be any issue. But do you really think this apartment complex would evict him just for these dogs if there wasn't, some prior stuff going on with Jermaine Burton? If he was, clean as a whistle, doing everything right, and then he brought the dogs, they wouldn't evict him for that, right? That's just kind of what my gut tells me. But he does have these 2 evictions, right? First time, it was the unpaid rent, which you're a professional football player. What are you doing, right? And then the second time, allegedly having, dogs in the apartment when they were not supposed to be there. That is per James Rapine. I'm sure he has that covered perfectly, so I definitely believe that that is the reason for the second eviction. But then another incident, as I just mentioned. He was accused of assault, and look, this woman called 911. This was a couple of months ago, back in December, accused Burton of assaulting her, and apparently Burton harassed her, broke her phone, grabbed her, threw her down, just a bunch of awful things. And the woman did say that they were together, as in a relationship when this went down, but she did refuse to press charges, which certainly is kind of an interesting element to the whole situation. So, there no legal action has been taken because she has not pressed charges. But this is what caused Jermaine Burton to not travel with the team to Pittsburgh that final week of the season. It was noted as a coach's decision, right? And then this kind of came out a little bit later. So this really is the incident that sticks out to me the most. Now, again, didn't press charges, so that certainly is noteworthy, right? That no charges were pressed, but I have a hard time believing that this girl would just go out there and make up these things. Obviously, the 911 call did indeed happen. So, at this point, it just looks like Jermaine Burton is not a very good person, to just be completely honest with you, and clearly his head is not screwed on properly at this point. And then if you flash back to earlier in the season, he was benched for missing a walkthrough. That happened at the very beginning of the year, and it was, I believe, going into a game where T. Higgins wasn't going to be playing, and they said, you know what, Burton was probably going to be kind of a focal point for their offense, and he misses a walkthrough and ends up being inactive for that game. So that's another thing. It's just like, Burton, what are you doing, man? Just not good. And then, of course, in the preseason, kind of Herb Street and Al Michaels kind of went a little bit viral talking about the fact that he was sleeping in meetings. I think a lot of people kind of went after him for kind of bringing that up on the broadcast, but then look at all the things that have happened since then. I think they clearly were in the right for bringing that up, so just absolutely ridiculous. The things that Jermaine Burton has done this season. As far as out there on the football field, he didn't produce like, the Cincinnati Bengals were hoping he would. There were some good moments that he had kind of as a returner, but you pick this guy in the 3rd round. He's got tons of physical traits, and he wasn't able to go out there and capitalize on the football field because he just wasn't sure how to be a professional, and that obviously is a major red flag for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll see if he'll even be around for next season. Want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Let you guys know that Bengals Sideline hats are available right now. Really encourage you guys to get over there and check some of these out. There's some really cool ones. I've got a couple of these here. Perfect to, just wear, going on a walk or whatever. Perhaps wear to work if you're allowed to wear hats into work, or of course wear to Bengals games or even some Reds games at GABP. Show your Cincinnati Bengals pride. Get some of these hats courtesy of our friends over at Fanatics. That link, by the way, is going to be in the comments section and the description of today's video. So big shout out to Fanatics helping us out with these Bengals Sideline hats. All right, transitioning into the last part of our show here today. Joe Burrow was back on PMT, the Pardon My Take podcast, Barstool podcast between Big Cat and PFT. I think those guys are just absolutely hilarious. Burrow hung out with them and interviewed with them at the Super Bowl down at Radio Row, and then it just aired this morning. So we're kind of going to be talking about some of the stuff that came up on that podcast. The first thing that he mentioned, obviously, it's PFT and Big Cat, so there's a lot of fun stuff, right? Not a ton of hard-hitting stuff, at this point. But Burrow did mention how the Eagles make the cap work, and, I thought that was very interesting. They asked him, they said, "Do you understand the cap?" And he said, "Well, not really, but kind of." And, PFT said he doesn't believe that the cap exists, which is kind of funny. That's part of the reason I like PFT and Big Cat so much is because they're so relatable, right? Because to be honest with you, I don't really understand the cap either. It seems like it changes every year, and teams are, able to find ways to finagle around it. But regardless, he said the Eagles are paying everyone, and he would like to see Cincinnati to kind of adapt that same approach. Certainly one of the main aspects about their conversation that stood up to me. He also talked about restructuring his contract. And they kind of asked him, what that exactly meant to restructure a contract, which, again, very relatable, right? Because there's a lot of us out there that we hear this phrase restructure, and we're like, okay, what exactly does that mean? Here's what Burrow said. He said you can convert some money to a signing bonus, which will lower the cap hit, and you can push some money back to the back end of the contract. When you get to the back end, you can also restructure and convert that to a signing bonus, or just take less money. And just less money overall. And they asked him which kind of approach that he would like to take, and he said, "We'll see." So he does appear to be very open to restructuring his deal. By the way, he doesn't need to restructure his deal for the Bengals to make all of this work. Maybe at some point down the line that would be helpful. But the Bengals have the cap space they need in order to make things happen with T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, and Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow even having to restructure his contract at this point. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Rank Joe Burrow among NFL QBs. I want to know what you guys think. For me, I had him at 1 this year, and then after the Super Bowl, I think more people might agree with that statement. But let me know down in the comment section of today's video. They also talked about the slow starts, of course, in September, which ultimately resulted in the Bengals missing the postseason this year, obviously coupled with the playoffs as well. But the slow starts, obviously, were a massive issue. And Joe Burrow did say he was open to playing more in the preseason. I really found this particular part of their conversation to be very noteworthy. He said the offense is at a disadvantage in the preseason because you're not game planning for their defense. You're kind of just running the same training camp plays. So I did think that was kind of interesting, but he did say that he would like to go out there and play more in the preseason. The Bengals have to find a way to switch things around early in the season. When you take a look at what they've done in September under head coach Zach Taylor, it's been absolutely pitiful. That's just you can't win like that when you are in this situation with Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow at the helm. So obviously that has got to get cleaned up, and hopefully the Bengals ultimately can do a better job of that going forward next season. Also, do want to bring up this from Joe Burrow, kind of a quote that stood out to me about kind of the things that he was dealing with out there on the football field, and really just the season that 2024 was for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, I would say it's a tough to describe because you're in it as a team, so everybody's down in the dumps in the locker room. It's not like, oh, we're the offense. We scored 30, but we lost. Nobody's happy about that. And there were definitely games that the offense could have closed it out in which we didn't. But like I said, I felt like I had my best year as a pro, and so I was happy about that week in and week out, but it was pretty frustrating. I've never had a year like this, so it was mentally taxing and challenging to continue to stay disciplined and consistent week in and week out, day in and day out. But at some point, you just realize that this is your job, and that's what you do. And if I'm going to continue to play as good as I want to, then I'm going to have to keep doing these things daily to put myself in the best position to succeed. I did think it was interesting that he brought up the fact that, hey, there were some games where the offense had opportunities to close it out. Look, the reason the Bengals missed the playoffs was because of their defense, but if you think back to the season in 2024, yeah, there were several games where the offense was playing really well throughout the entirety of the game, and they had opportunities there to finish it at the end and go kind of get a score that really kind of took advantage of the situation that they were in, and they weren't able to do that. And throughout Joe Burrow's career to this point, he was always known as being the rising to the occasion in the fourth quarter, right? That was always the money quarter for Joe Burrow, and I think there were aspects of this season when that really wasn't the case. Also in the sit-down with PFT and Big Cat, he talked about the fact that the wrist, by the way, is still an issue, which I thought was really interesting. He said a couple of times he landed on the wrist and it didn't feel good. So it was pretty amazing that he was still able to have this season with the wrist still kind of bothering him a little bit. And also one thing that I took away from this was he said every week he would go home and the games that they would lose, the heartbreaking losses that they had, and he would just get back to his house and think, how in the world did we lose this game? Certainly all of us as fans had that same thought as well throughout the majority of the 2024 season for Cincinnati. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, youtube.com/BengalsTV. Don't miss out on any of our Bengals news and rumors coverage. We will be here all season long, all off season long as well. Hit that sub button right now.